a forbidden love.
He is a kid that is living the dream of most teenage American males. He would have done anything for her, and he did.
A cold-blooded murder.
I saw Greg laying there, face down.
Police uncover a twisted tale made for the tabloids.
We've got a beautiful woman, we've got an ugly crime.
With one woman at the center of it all.
I've heard her described as a sociopath. I don't think that's inaccurate.
Was she a criminal mastermind or just an immature newlywed desperate for attention?
I'm Erin Brockovich. I've spent my entire life searching for the truth, separating fact from fiction. Then Hollywood knocked on my door and put my life on the big screen. And I can tell you, there's the movie version of what happened. And then there's the real story.
The quaint suburban town of Derry, New Hampshire, May 1st, 1990. Just after 10 p.m., 22-year-old Pamela Smart arrives home to find her husband lying in the entryway.
Okay, what's going on over there, ma'am? There's somebody screaming for help outside. She just ran in and said her husband's on the ground. Misty Morning Drive. Please, it's an emergency.
When police respond, they discover 24-year-old insurance salesman Greg Smart dead from a single gunshot to the head. No one could have predicted such a devastating turn of events for the young couple. Newlyweds with their whole life ahead of them.
They were two kids at the beginning of their marriage, with their first jobs, their first home.
At the crime scene, Pam seems shell-shocked.
Mrs. Smart was hysterical. She has just lost her husband. Someone has killed him.
What police don't know is that Pam Smart is guarding a dark secret involving a teenage lover. When the scandal comes to light, Pam will become a suspect in her husband's murder. And this small New Hampshire town will be thrust into the international spotlight.
The story of Greg Smart's murder was so outrageous. It inspired the movie To Die For, starring Nicole Kidman. Kidman portrays a cold, conniving seductress who will do anything to further her fledgling television career, including murder. But what the movie doesn't show is how investigators built their case from a suspicion to a hunch and then broke it wide open by convincing those involved to reveal all.
The love story that would end so horribly started off innocently enough. At a New Year's Eve party in Londonderry, New Hampshire in 1985.
It was at a huge party that we had, really packed with people. Greg was really popular.
18-year-old Pam Wojcik was a freshman in college who loved to party. And she was instantly drawn to Greg Smart.
She sat next to him down on the couch and started flirting with him and twirling his hair.
With his rocker haircut and boyish smile, 20-year-old Greg was just Pam's type.
Greg was a great guy. If somebody said, hey, let's go away for the weekend, and it was Friday night, he would go. He always lived like that.
Greg was also known as a ladies' man.
Greg was seeing, as usual, a bunch of other girls. A lot of the girls seemed to flock to him.
But soon after Greg met Pam, he began to change his ways and settle down.
Over time, it slowly got, more serious and more serious.
Pam was very excited about her relationship with Greg. She used to write poems, and she sent me a lot of them.
When Greg surprised Pam with an engagement ring in January of 1988, she accepted. Then, Greg cut off his long rock and roll hair, which Pam loved, and took a job as an insurance salesman.
And I remember there was a big issue when he finally did cut it off. She was very upset.
Greg Smart was growing up, and I don't think Pam was ready to grow up yet.
Still, by May of 1989, they were married. The young couple aspired to different goals from the start. While Greg talked about starting a family, Pam dreamed of a career in television.
She was struggling to try to find a job as a reporter, which is what she really wanted to do.
Instead, she landed a job as the media services director for the local school district, where her responsibilities included making educational videos.
One of the projects that she had decided to do was some kind of a documentary which would involve some of the kids in the surrounding high school, and that was going to be about self-esteem.
She worked closely with student volunteers, including 15-year-old Cecilia Pierce.
Cecilia Pierce was Pamela Smart's student intern, and she became a really close friend and confidant, which was a little bit unusual.
Long-haired sophomore Billy Flynn was another volunteer.
He is an aspiring rock musician. He plays electric guitar, and he's got long hair. He is exactly what her husband, Greg, used to be.
Like many teenage boys, Billy was attracted to his teacher. But unlike many teenage boys, his crush didn't end there. Even before Billy's daydreams were realized, the Smarts' marriage was headed for trouble.
A couple of months into the marriage, Greg didn't come home one night. Pam asked him the next day when he did come home where he was, and he said that he was out with a woman.
Greg confessed that he'd had a one-night stand. The couple talked it through and agreed to leave it behind them. But Pam couldn't stop thinking about Greg's betrayal.
It was so early into the marriage, and she couldn't understand what it was that she lacked. She was very despondent about it and very depressed about it.
Pam increasingly found companionship in the high school students she worked with. On the night of Greg's murder, police haven't yet scratched the surface of the salacious story that was behind it all. The crime scene they enter has the appearance of something far less sensational.
Each floor had looked like it had been touched and had been gone through. There were items removed from the cabinets and from the bureaus and from the kitchen.
It did look like it was an interrupted burglary.
Still, right away, the circumstances strike police as odd. Greg Smart was killed around 9 p.m. on a Tuesday.
The time of day was not when typically burglaries occurred.
Robberies rarely occur at an hour when most people are at home.
That was the one thing that didn't really match. So we start looking at this from the perspective of like, all right, if it's not a burglary interrupted, then who has a reason to do this to him?
As detectives work the crime scene, they are startled by the behavior of the victim's young widow. Within hours of finding her husband shot to death, Pam Smart demands that investigators stop what they're doing and listen to her theories of the crime.
She almost immediately told us she knew it was a burglary when she walked in.
We were both surprised at the fact that she wanted to talk to us. Most people are so distraught that usually the interview's not very good anyway. You know, she wasn't that way. I don't want to say it was necessarily that I didn't like her, but there was just that something there.
Coming up, Pam Smart's increasingly bizarre behavior raises eyebrows and red flags.
She's trying to produce the news story about her husband's murder.
A beautiful spring in the quiet New England town of Derry, New Hampshire, is interrupted by the murder of 24-year-old Greg Smart. His widow, Pam, is suspiciously composed at the crime scene. But the day after the murder, police are still searching for a motive and a suspect. Following routine procedure, detectives ask Pam Smart not to talk to the media about the case.
The police had asked us and Pam to stay away from the media for the time being because anything you say can disrupt the investigation.
Less than 48 hours after finding her husband murdered, Pam phones local TV crime reporter Bill Spencer.
Pamela Smart calls me and asks me to interview her, which completely just blows me away, and everybody else.
When Spencer arrives for the interview, he's stunned by Pam's appearance.
A little over 24 hours after a murder, the wife doesn't greet you dressed to the teeth, makeup perfect, hair perfect.
He's even more stunned by Pam's strange behavior.
1 year ago today, we were married right about this, this time.
One of the first things that Pamela says is, it's going to be our 1-year wedding anniversary in a couple of days. How would it be if I go into the refrigerator, because I've got the top layer of our wedding cake, and I could go pull that out. You could get some B-roll of me doing that, and wouldn't that make an emotional, poignant moment in your story? And I was like, holy cats, this girl is helping me produce the story. She's trying to produce the news story about her husband's murder.
But just when Bill Spencer thought it couldn't get any weirder,
I feel like if this happened at any point in Greg's life, it wouldn't be fair then, it wouldn't make sense then, and now, there's no better time in his life for this to happen.
I'm like, what?
And now, there's no better time in his life for this to happen.
It couldn't happen in a better time. That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard from any grieving widow.
In the movie To Die For, Nicole Kidman's character is a fame-hungry weather reporter at a local TV station who leaps at the chance to be in the spotlight after her husband is murdered. The real Pam Smart gave dozens of press interviews in the weeks following Greg's death. Why did she do it? What could possibly have been the thinking behind Pam's media spree?
If you wanted to analyze Pam Smart as to why she was seeking the publicity, the suspicion was she liked the attention. She liked getting on TV because that's what fueled her.
But Pam's friends and family have another explanation. They claim her bizarre behavior was caused by an extreme reaction to antidepressants.
They ended up putting her on Prozac.
Because Pam felt so rotten, she doubled the prescription, and that kind of changed her behavior a lot.
Drug-fueled or not, Pam's ongoing willingness to give interviews
I'm gonna be crying at the funeral and crying at the wake.
begins to frustrate detectives. Why can't the young widow just keep her mouth shut?
She's giving interviews left and right, to the point where we ended up ordering everybody that was involved in the investigation to not tell her anything.
I would never wish anything like this upon anyone.
A month goes by, and police are no closer to solving the case. Then, out of the blue, they receive a call that blows the case wide open. Local parent, 45-year-old Vance Latamy, claims he has information about a murder.
He's very concerned because he thinks his son may be involved in a homicide.
Latamy says that his 17-year-old son, JR, and 2 of his friends have been talking about committing a murder.
Mr. Latamy gets to find out that the gun that was supposedly used was a .38. He owns a .38. He goes and checks to see whether his gun is in fact still where he thought it was supposed to be. Well, he opens his dresser, he takes a look at this firearm. He says, well, wait a second, I didn't clean this. Why is it clean now?
The gun is sent out for ballistics testing. When the results come back, police are astonished. The single bullet that killed Greg Smart was fired from Latamy's gun. Police suddenly have 3 suspects in the murder. 17-year-old J.R. Latamy and his friends, 16-year-old Pete Randall, and 16-year-old Billy Flynn.
They're kind of a rough group of kids. They had been involved in some minor crimes.
But petty crime is one thing. Could they really have committed a murder?
You don't expect there to be this level of involvement of this type of crime from a group of kids that are still young teenagers.
It doesn't take long for detectives to identify a possible link between the three boys and Greg Smart. His wife, Pam.
The teenagers are students at Winnicott High School, where Pamela Smart works.
Two of the boys are students in her media course.
They were making a video together. Pam Smart was the coordinator, the kids are the talent in the video.
Latimy's gun is enough to secure arrest warrants for Billy, Pete, and JR, and charge them with murder.
You got anything to say this morning? Are you involved in this murder? Who pulled the trigger in this case?
The three suspects refuse to talk. They lawyer up immediately. Investigators still have no idea why these three boys would want to murder Greg Smart. Desperate for information, police turn to another student, Cecilia Pierce, Pam Smart's intern.
Cecilia obviously knows more about this because she's interconnected to all these kids.
Police bring Cecilia in for questioning.
What kind of a relationship do you have with Pam?
Close. She's kind of like a big sister.
At first, Cecilia is hesitant to betray her friends.
She said she was very worried about how she might be perceived, how she might look like she's involved in this homicide.
But detectives are convinced Cecilia knows something, and they ratchet up the pressure.
The pressure being that if she knows something and she's not telling us, that her involvement might look more serious than what it could have been.
The threat of being arrested does the trick. When they ask Cecilia about the three boys' connection to Pam Smart, she blurts out something they never saw coming.
What kind of a relationship did Pam and Billy have?
And they were having an affair.
How did you find out about the affair?
I walked in on them while they were having sex.
Coming up, Cecilia Pierce isn't finished with surprises.
The bombshell of all bombshells is about to come to light.
In early summer 1990, the sleepy town of Derry, New Hampshire is still reeling from the murder of 24-year-old Greg Smart. Detectives are questioning Cecilia Pierce, Pamela Smart's student intern, and she's just given them a tantalizing piece of information.
That's when we heard that Pamela Smart's having an affair with a student.
What Cecilia is saying, that Pam was sleeping with one of the boys accused of killing her husband, is nothing short of scandalous.
Bill was in love with Pam.
When he spent the night, where did he stay?
In Pam's room.
Where did Pam stay?
In Pam's room.
All night?
Yep.
According to Cecilia, it all began about 6 months before the murder, when Pam asked Billy Flynn to participate in a video contest for the Florida Orange Juice Council. Billy, who'd had a crush on Pam since meeting her at the beginning of the school year, jumped at the chance.
He was openly adoring of her and flattering and complimented her, and it sort of relieved the pain and the depression that she was feeling about Greg's affair.
She liked him. You know, all the guys thought she was good looking, and she just picked him out of all the guys.
Cecilia says that for Billy and Pam, extra time together after school led to a kiss. Then in March, while her husband Greg was away on business, Pam invited Billy and Cecilia to her condo.
Did you ever stay over at her house?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell me about that week?
The three watched the erotic thriller 9.5 weeks. Then, Cecilia saw Pam escort Billy upstairs. Pam had Billy wait in the bedroom she shares with her husband. She returned moments later.
What do you think?
How many 16, 17-year-old boys have a 23-year-old blonde school teacher throwing herself at you?
That night, Pam took Billy's virginity.
Billy Flynn has to be going crazy. He's hit the jackpot, the mother lode. He's hot for teacher, and she's completely hot.
As their affair heated up, Pam swore Billy to secrecy. No one, except a handful of Billy's friends, knew about their illicit escapades. For nearly 2.5 months, the two had sex every chance they could. They did it in the back of Pam's car, in the woods, in the park, even in Billy's own bedroom while his mother was down the hall.
Here's a kid that is living the dream of most teenage American males. He's having a relationship with his teacher that he thinks is this beautiful goddess. He's in love with her.
With her marriage on the rocks, the reckless affair filled a void in Pam's life.
She still wants a rock and roll guy, and there's Billy Flynn with his electric guitar. He's perfect, you know, it all makes sense.
Still, Pam knew she couldn't keep up her double life forever.
She was afraid all the time. She didn't want her husband to know. She didn't want her father to know. She didn't want her boss to know. She didn't want her neighbors to know. She kept telling herself, end it, end it, end it.
When Cecilia Pierce tells detectives about Pam and Billy, they're stunned. But nothing can prepare them for her next revelation.
The bombshell of all bombshells is about to come to light.
Did she ever tell you about Greg's death?
Yep. It was her idea.
How do you know that?
Pam told me. She told them to set it up like a burglary. She told them how to arrange the furniture. To wear black, pull their hair back, wear gloves, not to leave any fingerprints. She told them what time Greg would be home. She told Bill not to kill Greg in front of the dog because it would traumatize the dog.
What I think really crystallized her as a suspect was when we heard from Cecilia Pierce about the affair with Billy Flynn and that she was not revealing the affair to anybody in the police department. She was keeping all this information secret and quiet.
Cecilia's claims turned the investigators' focus squarely on Pam Smart. Suddenly, her calm in the wake of her husband's murder, her welcoming of the press, all make sense.
I've heard her described as a sociopath. I don't think that's inaccurate.
Cecilia's knowledge of the alleged murder plot isn't enough for Pam's arrest. Without corroborating statements from anyone else, detectives need to hear it from the widow herself. They decide on a bold plan. They ask Cecilia Pierce to wear a body wire and record her conversations with Pam.
We didn't have a lot of other options. There was really no other person that she was talking to that she would trust enough to talk about specific details about the murder.
But can a teenage student intern really get a confession out of her teacher? Police watch covertly as Cecilia meets Pam in the high school parking lot.
We gave her advice on what to do if she felt something bad was going to happen, code words and things where she could back out.
We're going to conduct an audio surveillance one Pamela Smart.
Hi. Good.
Coming up, will detectives get the smoking gun they're looking for?
It's not found to have any evidence because it is no evidence.
Investigators in the Greg Smart murder case are conducting a covert wiretap of the victim's widow. They're hoping that Pamela Smart's teenage student intern can get Pam to admit to her involvement on tape.
I mean, I don't know what to do. I'm just sick of lying, you know?
Cecilia was trying to get Pam to make some incriminating statements, and she was kind of leading her with these different questions.
At first, it seems that Pam is wise to the trap.
Pam actually said to her, I'm afraid you're going to be completely wired, so she gave her a big hug. And she didn't detect the body wire. Good luck for us.
Cecilia tells Pam she's worried about her own knowledge of the murder getting her into trouble, and asks her advice.
Well, I have to go talk to the Attorney General. And you said this is your last chance. So now, I mean, I don't know what to do. What do they think? Pretty much, they've established that, yeah, you had Greg killed. Why, though? As far as I can see it, Bill did it because he loved you. I mean, you didn't pay him money. Did you pay him? They're not going to find any money missing because there is none. Because there was no one paid for the house. They're not going to have any evidence because there is no evidence. All I knew is that I had to come and talk to you because, I mean, I don't know what to do. If you do confess it, that you're going to have more problems than you ever had. If you tell the truth, you're going to be able to the murder. Right? So that's your choice. They will arrest you if you will be an accessory. No matter what plea bargaining they tell you. I'm serious. Okay? You're better off to just give me the same story and not know who. And I think I've been a very good friend to you. But what could you get me to do if you send me the
By the end of Cecilia and Pam's conversation, detectives are convinced they have enough to take Pam down. Detective Pelletier greets Pam at the high school with a two-part message.
Well, Pam, we have good news and we have bad news. The good news is we solved the murder of your husband. The bad news is you're under arrest, so stand up and put your hands behind your back.
Pam is charged with conspiracy to murder her husband. The story of Pam's arrest and rumors of her affair with Billy spread quickly and unleash a firestorm.
The defendant stands accused of seducing a virginal 16-year-old boy and then soliciting him.
Pictures of Pamela Smart were picked up at the film developers by Smart's admitted secret lover.
Once she was arrested, the media attention, it picked up quite a bit. All of a sudden, there's reporters from Australia and New Zealand and Japan.
It's pretty weird that she got a bunch of 16-year-olds involved. I think she's guilty.
I think she's gonna get off.
As the media coverage explodes, it seems that everyone wants to know why Pam did it.
You know, if she's guilty, why? You know, we want to know why.
Pam had no reason to have her husband murdered. No reason whatever. She could have divorced him.
Why would Pam Smart, my niece, kill her husband? For what reason? It made no sense.
Cecilia Pierce claims that she has the answer.
She couldn't get a divorce because she wanted the dog, the car, the house, the furniture. She didn't know what the life insurance was. Greg had just put a paper in front of her and told her to sign it.
The other three suspects, Billy Flynn, Pete Randall, and J.R. Latomy, still aren't talking.
They were uncooperative with us through all of this.
Then, prosecutors moved to have the boys tried as adults. It means they could face life in prison.
Certifying the three of them as adults really put them in a position where they had to think about what was going to happen to the rest of their lives.
Only when they were facing real time did they suddenly cave in and point to her as the master manipulator of this scheme.
All three boys cut deals with the prosecutor. In exchange for testifying against Pam, they will face reduced sentences. Now, Billy Flynn and his friends start spilling the gory details.
She actually asked you to kill her? Yeah. And so what happened when you said you didn't do it?
She flipped out. She started yelling at me. So this is it. This is what she's over. She's obviously don't want to be with me.
And it's in those conversations that the whole story unraveled. Pam Smart's relationship with Billy, her pressure on Billy to have her husband killed.
But is Billy Flynn telling the truth? Or just trying to save himself? Prosecutor Paul Machado doesn't doubt Pam's guilt.
For Pam Smart to have not been guilty, you would have believed all these people were in this grand Machiavellian conspiracy that they planned so perfectly, and that just wasn't feasible. This was not a weak case against Pam Smart. It was overwhelming in some ways. Our job as prosecutors was not to screw it up and make a mistake.
On March 4th, 1991, the trial of Pamela Smart begins amidst a media blitz. All of America and beyond are eager to hear every salacious detail.
You've got 3 teenage kids accused of committing the murder itself, and they were directed by the wife, who happens to be a teacher. How could it not be on every talk show, in the world?
Pete Randall is the first of the 3 boys to be called to the stand. He starts off with a vivid description of Greg Smart's last moments.
He was telling us not to hurt him. Please don't hurt him, dude. Please don't, he's begging for his life.
Randall says he asked Greg Smart for his wedding band.
He told me he couldn't give it to me.
Why?
He said his wife would kill him.
Billy Flynn supplies the jury with a motive.
I didn't want to kill Greg. I wanted to be with Pam. I never would have killed Greg if it wasn't for Pam.
He really drew this portrait of Pam Smart as this older woman, seductress, who induced him into murder.
He was, kneeling there, and it was...
After you pointed the gun at his head, what'd you do?
I just stood there.
How long was it?
100 years, it seemed like. I said, God, forgive me. I pulled the trigger.
He did not seem like he was lying. He did not appear to be an actor. He clearly seemed to be what he was, a 16-year-old boy who would have done anything for her.
Billy's testimony is so convincing, even Greg Smart's brother Dean can't help but feel sorry for the clearly distraught 16-year-old.
He's bawling his eyes out. He's saying how much he loved Pam. And my emotions went from anger and hatred to, I felt for him.
Despite the boys' confessions about their involvement at Pam Smart's behest, the prosecution can't convict Pam of conspiracy unless they prove she orchestrated the murder. The wiretap tapes of Cecilia Pierce talking to Pam are their silver bullet. Except that the primary recording device failed during the wiretap, and the prosecution must rely on mini cassette recorder backup tapes. They are almost unintelligible.
The quality is so bad, and you can only kind of pick out a little bit about what she's actually talking about.
to take it on the next birthday.
For Rob Fowler, who knew all of the suspects involved and who watched the entire trial, the tapes were too difficult to understand.
You don't know what's going on, the interplay between Pam and Celia. You can't see any facial gestures, you can't see any actions. The tapes weren't clear enough, really.
The judge rules that transcripts of the tapes can't be relied upon as accurate and rejects them as evidence. It will be up to the jury to decipher the tapes themselves.
The juror was able to listen to the tapes with headphones on, played by fairly sophisticated equipment.
If the jury hears what detectives believe is on the tape, it could be enough to convict Pam Smart. If they don't, she could walk free. Coming up, Pam Smart takes the stand.
I want this jury to understand the truth.
In New Hampshire's Rockingham County Court, the trial of Pamela Smart is underway. Prosecutors have just presented what should be one of their strongest pieces of evidence: the taped recording of Pamela Smart talking about the murder of her husband. But the jury must listen to the often unintelligible tape without a transcript.
That's when I'm gonna get arrested. But I could probably get out of it because they're not gonna have any proof, you know?
I mean, it's hard to argue against hearing Pam Smart say, if the boys talk, they're going to convict us of murder. If the boys will just keep quiet, everything will be fine.
The prosecution can only hope that the jury hears past the poor quality to what they believe is damning evidence of Pam Smart's guilt. On day 10 of the trial, the defense finally calls Pam Smart to testify. Her attorneys hope that hearing her version of events will convince the jury of her innocence. With the surveillance tapes of questionable value, the verdict could come down to whose story the jury believes. First, Pam explains why she lied to police about her affair with Billy.
He came over to my office, and I had told him that I had known he had liked me, and that I thought he was really nice, and that I liked him too, but that I was married and that I was not interested in having a relationship with him. Well, I didn't set out to have an affair with him, but I did.
But while Pam now openly admits to her relationship with Billy, she claims there is more to the story. That Greg knew all about her affair.
She said, this is it. You know, I have to take the chance and come clean with Greg. So she told him.
She said, we talked it out, and we decided that I want this marriage to work.
According to Pam, she was grateful for Greg's forgiveness and was convinced their marriage could recover. Then she broke the news to Billy.
I told him that I didn't think it was right and that it was wrong and that I wanted to be with Greg, and he kept saying, why didn't I just get a divorce? And I said, because I love Greg. He told me that he was going to kill himself.
Please don't do it, please don't do it.
Very shortly thereafter, she came home and fell over Greg Smart's body.
During cross-examination, the prosecution grills Pam about her accusations against Billy.
Do you want this jury to understand that Bill Flynn decided to kill your husband because you broke up with him?
I want this jury to understand the truth.
Is that what you're claiming the truth is?
I don't know why Bill Flynn killed Greg. I can just come in here and give my testimony.
So even as you sit here today, you still have no idea why he may have done this, is that it?
I didn't say I had no idea, but I don't know specifically.
Well, I'm asking you, what do you think? Why do you think he did this?
Probably because he thought we could be together.
As Pam's supporters watch her on the stand, they worry that she appears cold.
Someone advised her not to show any real emotion. So she came across as unfeeling, and I think that that was a very huge mistake.
I think some people refer to her as the Ice Princess. When she took the stand, I don't think she really generated a lot of sympathy.
To many in the courtroom, Pam Smart appeared to be a calculating manipulator who used her teenage lover to get rid of her husband, not unlike Nicole Kidman's character in the movie To Die For. Was Pam's cold, emotionless appearance masking a guilty conscience? Or was she simply an overwrought young widow trying to put up a good front?
It takes the jury 13 hours to reach a verdict. After nearly a year of obsessive media coverage, millions tune in to hear the end of the story live.
From the first day to the last, Pamela Smart showed no emotion. Today, she greeted the long-awaited verdict, the cold stare.
I'll say the defendant guilty or not guilty of the offense charge.
Guilty.
Pamela Smart is found guilty on 3 counts. One of them, conspiracy to murder, carries with it an automatic life sentence.
I am required and do hereby sentence you to the New Hampshire State Prison for Women for the remainder of your life without the possibility of parole. This hearing is adjourned.
All right.
The parents of Pamela Smart quickly left the courtroom after the jury convicted their daughter on all counts.
When I heard the count, guilty, 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 my tears started pouring down my face. I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
After pleading guilty, triggerman Billy Flynn and his friend Pete Randall are sentenced to 40 years in prison. J.R. Latomy, who provided the murder weapon, pleads guilty to second-degree murder and gets 30 years. Of those who followed the Pamela Smart case closely, some still look back and wonder, was justice served?
Had Pamela Smart pulled the trigger that night, I'd say she should be in prison forever. But I don't think there should be a slammed steel door to her cell that's never going to open, ever. I don't think that that's fair.
Are the streets safer with Pamela Smart behind bars? You know, I can't sit here and say she was a serial killer who killed wantonly and randomly, but that's not why she's behind bars. She's behind bars because she killed Greg Smart.
Pam Smart has been in prison now for over 20 years and continues to maintain her innocence.
It's Pam who gets the rap of being the cold-blooded sociopathic killer, and I never will understand that. Pam was convicted for the sin.